Welcome to Here Where You Belong, your go-to podcast for exploring belonging with your host and belonging expert, Dea Irby. We are thrilled to have you join us. Together, we'll dive into the depths of what it means for each of us to find our own place in the world, whether it's within our communities, our relationships, or within ourselves. Today's episode is meant to inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. So, grab a cozy spot and settle in. Welcome to Here Where You Belong.
Hello, awesome belongers. Welcome home to Here Where You Belong podcast. Today's guest is the kind of person whose very life whispers and sometimes shouts that belonging isn't bound by age, place, or expectation. It's something we walk into one intentional step at a time. I'm Dea, your host, and I'm so excited to introduce someone whose journey is both wild and reverent. Let's welcome Diane Gansauer. Hey, Diane.
Hi, Dea. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I'm so glad you're here, and I have some more information about you. What kind of person walks 3,100 miles on purpose from Mexico to Canada at age 67? And what kind of woman steps away from a long, successful career in conservation, not out of failure, but because the work no longer felt like home? Today, you are about to meet that kind of person. Diane Gansauer is not your average hiker, nor your average anything. She's a certified Master Life-Cycle Celebrant, an interfaith minister, and a long-distance trail companion, not only for those trekking mountain passes, but for families navigating the sacred terrain of grief and remembrance. With over 400 funerals and celebration of life ceremonies to her name, Diane doesn't just walk paths, she helps others find theirs. She left behind a world where she no longer felt she belonged, and in so doing, carved a new way forward. From wilderness and solitude to communal healing, from storytelling under the stars to the kind of awe that only nature and the human spirit can stir, Diane brings a presence that is as grounding as it is transcendent. Get ready for a conversation that challenges assumptions about age, meaning, and many wild places, both inner and outer, where we might hear where we belong. She is the author of The Waypoints. From 400 farewells and 3,000 miles, chronicles the overlapping lessons from gathering more than 400 life stories while also spending time deep in nature on a very long walk from Mexico to Canada. Let's walk a few steps with her, shall we? How was that introduction? Is there anything you want to correct or add to that, Diane?
No, that was a wonderful introduction. I sound pretty interesting.
You are. Go meet that person, huh?
That was wonderful, Dea. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And as you know, this is a podcast about belonging and people telling their stories about belonging. So now that I've talked a long time about you, how about you share your belonging story, any part of it or all the parts of it?
Well, I think we spend much of our life trying to find our niche, which is, it doesn't sound like belonging, but I think it is. It's like you find where you feel at home, and that is in community, but where you can also contribute your skills, your passions, to uniquely have a positive impact in that space. And I think it took me a long time to find what I was destined to be. And I feel very blessed. I not infrequently, thank God, that I lived long enough to find it. But starting out in life, I was a little kid in a Catholic girls' school, which is generally run by lots of rules. So you know where you belong as long as you are following the rules. And then as you get out on your own in life, it was a very, very protected environment. I'm sure I was naive about many things. I wasn't even in a classroom with a boy until freshman year of college. So I say, coming out into the world, I felt like a fish out of water. And so it took me quite a while to figure out who I was in the less protected world. I was an arts major for the most part, back in the days when you could, form your own interdisciplinary life and studies. And I did. And I had some talent that led to eventually, but though not very long, I mean, it was still in my 20s, was managing some productions off Broadway and on tour. I had some talents in the arts, but not enough to really make a go of it professionally. And I got tired of being poor, I think.
Minor details.
Just wanted a little bit more comfortable life. And stayed in the nonprofit sector for quite a while. That did feel like at home to me. I had more of a chance to do good in the world, so to speak. My faith was always important to me my entire life. So I was conversing with a much higher power to say, am I where I'm supposed to be? But I think God guides best when we're moving. And I've always been a person who's moved a lot. I had a lot of dance training, drama, voice, and you name it in the performing arts. Moved on eventually into a career also in the nonprofit world, and then in the government side of things, in land and wildlife conservation. I ascended to a pretty high rank there as a deputy director of a state agency in Colorado, overseeing several $1 million worth of programs. And I was not at home. I could tell it wasn't where I was supposed to be. It became, when you're working around that kind of money, the world becomes very political. And I mean political with a small p, not party politics, but just political maneuverings and lots of statistical research on behind the programs that you would recommend for funding. I wasn't good at it. Let's just.
You couldn't dance around it.
Some of it I could be good at, but the political side, I was not. And I didn't want to be. That's also important. Just did not feel at home there. Made a huge career shift in my 50s because of wanting to get back into the more creative work. I was trained as a celebrant, which, if your audience isn't familiar with that term, because it can mean different things in different circles, we are trained storytellers, story gatherers, really first, then relaying that story. We are ceremony people, specifically for the celebrants, working primarily with people who are not connected to a faith community. And that's a growing number of people in our culture. And yet, that doesn't mean they aren't spiritual people. They just, for various reasons, and we're probably all familiar with them in our own families, feel disconnected from faith communities. And I don't just mean within the Christian family of faith, but across all faith or no faith.
Right.
Disconnected. And let's say someone in their world passes away, a loved one passes away. That's when people come home to their soul, their heart, where they feel a need to say goodbye in a respectful way. And they no longer have someone to call on because they've disconnected from a faith community. And the celebrants, through funeral homes now, not through churches, but through funeral homes, are connected with these families to be of help. It isn't everywhere in the country. I work in the Denver area, however, and I founded the program for a dozen funeral homes in the Denver area. It's taken off and done. It's a very popular program. And here I feel at home. I have to say, in that work, I have felt at home because you are being of service. And I think we are our most fulfilled, satisfied selves when we know we are being of help to people who are in need, and people who are grieving are in need of someone coming alongside them and helping them when they feel that their loved one has been honored respectfully, authentically. That's an excellent way to start the grief journey.
How do you become a celebrant? I mean, do you just declare yourself, I think I'm going to help people through the grieving process? Or is there a certification or school or class? Or if someone listening wants to participate or go that route, what do they do?
There are a couple of organizations that offer celebrant training. I was trained through the Celebrant Foundation and Institute. That has since closed, but transferred its material and some of its faculty, including me, to Natural Transitions Institute. So they could Google, like we all do, Google celebrant training or look for natural transitions. The course training there, other than the fact that I'm on the faculty, so of course I'm biased. I mean, in the interest of full
Well, of course, it's
disclosure,
the best.
it's very in depth. It's longer than some. There's a semester, or like I think it's a 7 or 8 week course first in the basics, the foundations for doing ceremony. I mean, the history of that, and history of ceremony and ritual, and how this connects people and across communities and across time and place. And then the next semester, 7 week course, you choose a specialty. Some people, for example, might choose weddings, and funerals is the second one. And I think there's a third course that covers other kinds of ceremonies that mark transitions in life. And the training at that point is primarily in different cultural observations of death and how those are observed historically and in ceremony, as well as just training in the art of storytelling. Because primarily at transitions, there's a story behind any transition in life. And so being attuned to how to gather the stories in the case of a funeral, from several family members, for example, and put that in a coherent ceremony that's honoring and authentic to the person is what we're trained to
Well, I know
deliver.
when you lose a loved one, they're gone, and there are so many people that don't don't have the opportunity to get to know who that person was, and you just want to shout out like, yeah, but you don't know what a loss this is, because you don't know how awesome this person was and what they contributed.
Right.
And
Right.
and to have someone that can help you tell their story, it amplifies the dash.
Yes, I know that reference. Well, and some people want to get up and speak at their loved one's memorial gathering, and others absolutely don't. I mean, they don't want to get up and speak, that our emotions go to our voice. They don't want to be on display.
Right.
So there are certainly some differences unique to each family. But what I did as a funeral celebrant was always centered on the person's story. Whatever else, that is the centerpiece. And if they were a person of faith, then that's part of the story. But
Absolutely.
we don't automatically assume anything about beliefs. We have to find that out, because it's America. We vary in what we believe, truly.
So I'm just thinking that no matter what their story is, it really is how they belonged here.
Yes, that's true. And the family and friends and community that comes together, it's a whole belonging experience to say one of our own is now gone from us in physical presence. And we need to acknowledge that. That's a respectful, essential thing to do. Yes.
It's like one slice of the orange is out.
Yes.
And
Yes.
how did they belong in that space?
Yes. What are we now missing? And also,
Right.
what are we frankly taking with us from this life? I mean, we carry forward some aspect of any person who've had close community with. And what are we verbalizing that and honoring that, like in pictures and mementos and scrapbooks, and that's part of our carrying forward. Yes, I learned this from, and it could be a family member or a friend, but I'm forever changed because I was with this person.
Right. I don't know if this relates, but there have been some demonstrations at a gathering where somebody has glitter on their hands, and then they shake, and everybody ends up shaking hands with everybody. And everybody's got glitter by the end of everybody shaking hands with somebody.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that? I mean,
Yes.
that is what how they affect anybody that's around them.
Absolutely.
And to highlight their glitter.
I think that's, I mean, to make a bit of a connection here, that's also, well, central to my book, is that interconnectedness is something we feel when we come together in community and honor someone that all together we loved and respected, and interconnectedness in nature. You cannot spend any length of time in nature, and it could be your backyard. It doesn't have to be 50 miles into the wilderness, but the deeper the better because it's quieter. But you pick up on the interconnectedness of nature. Absolutely. And I think that was part of what was operating on my mind as I started to see that the lessons overlapped too in those two places.
Right. You mentioned your book. Briefly tell us about that. And
Where that came from?
yes, and I know getting a book published is,
Oh,
I liken it to birthing a child.
oh my gosh, yes.
You're pregnant with it forever, and then it
Yeah.
gets here, but then it's not done. You still have to feed it and raise it and diaper it and take it to school and do all these afterwards. But getting it to the birth is a challenge. But
I
where,
wish it was only 9 months. It was a lot longer than that.
yes. So how long did it take you to write?
To write was 2 years.
2 years.
Well,
And
2 years from the time I started writing till the time the book came out.
yes. And where did you, let's go with this, conceive of the idea? What helped you conceive the idea for the book?
You know, it was an idea before I started putting pen to paper, so to speak. It was
Yes.
I started this hike as a separate compartment in my life. I was working professionally as a celebrant starting end of 2013. I was hiking some, but working full time, you know, it was a big deal if I got 80 miles in a summer. And by 2017, I had finished hiking the Colorado Trail, which, if you consider all the forks of it, and I did both, was 567 miles. It overlaps a little more than half with the Continental Divide. Everybody knows there's mountains in Colorado. Part of that was the Continental Divide. I'm going to just say 250 miles to round it out. But when I finished that, I said, and I knew it was naive at the time, and this is the book, I was laughing at myself and laughing with my husband when I said, well, I'll just keep going. It is a daunting task to take on hiking the Continental Divide from Mexico to Canada.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say that you've accurately described that.
And I had done a piece in sections, that 200 plus miles I had done in pieces. To keep going was, you know, whatever 3,100 minus 250 is. So it was a lot of miles. I started that commitment in 2017. Not very long into that. And that was at the bottom of New Mexico. So the New Mexico border. And you're in the Chihuahuan Desert. And it's serious business. It's over 100 miles before you consistently have tree cover that's tall enough to shade you. Over 100 miles. So, but somewhere in there, it started to occur to me that I was processing in my heart and my mind the lives of the people that I was encountering as a celebrant. I was like processing their lives and what I was taking away with me in a positive way while I was in that desert. So it was very early on. I thought there's something here. Something's going on here. And by that, I mean, just to use an example, is I was carrying an enormous amount of weight for my body in the desert because you're carrying the water that you need until you can get to the next water source, of which there are very few. And so I was carrying, at the time, I only weighed 215 pounds and I was carrying 40. That's way too much weight for that size person, way too much. And by the time I got to the town of Lordsburg, which was about 80 miles in, I was crippled. I mean, really bent over, crippled. I had horrible blisters on one foot. So, long story short, what was gradually building in my mind was travel lightly, the metaphor of travel lightly. Just to give your listeners an idea of what's, what is this? The waypoints. What is that? The waypoints is a navigational term, only I wasn't using it in the book in a physical navigation, though they're out there. A waypoint sometimes looks like that, a pile of rocks called a cairn. I was using it as an internal metaphor of guidance down the path of life. And one of the waypoints in the book, it's a chapter, is called Travel Lightly. Even if you're not a backpacker, you can understand, anybody can understand the importance of, you don't carry anything you don't have to carry, because water's very heavy. Had to carry water, but other stuff you shed over the course of that long hike. You learn to get rid of stuff you don't have to carry. And I think any adult listener to your podcast would realize, boy, is that applicable in life? What am I carrying on my emotional back that I should not be? Is there a hurt that I should put behind me? Is there anger that I should put behind me, even if justified? Was there a betrayal that you're just going to have to learn to put down because it's weighing you down? Chances are it's not weighing down the person who betrayed you.
Right.
I hesitate to say, is there grief weighing you down? Because grief is on its own time schedule. It's on its own time frame. It's different for different people. But we all know that grief can weigh you down as well. And there were some very deeply grieving people that I worked with that I did see never put down the loss, but they put down the weight of it on their life after a choice to do that, move forward. So by 2022, I was writing my book, and it came out in March of this year, 2025.
Wow. Well, it's amazing. And we hadn't even talked about your 3,100 miles of the hike, but we need to take a break.
Okay. I think this is a good point.
Yes, and we will be right back after this break with Diane Gansauer. Hey there! Isn't my guest amazing? So glad you joined us today. In this world that often feels disconnected, building community and fostering belonging are essential. That's why I created this podcast, to bring inspiring people to you, to encourage you to create that sense of belonging and community, no matter where you are. If you're being blessed by my guests, and we have some more, like, subscribe, and share this podcast. You know who needs to hear this. Stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you belong. Now, back to our amazing guest. And we are back, belongers, with the amazing Diane Gansauer. And as you know, if you've listened to this podcast, I have my 3 favorite questions to ask on the second half. The first one is, what do you consider is your greatest accomplishment? Now, you've got a whole lot, Diane. I don't know what you're going to pick, but go for it.
I'm going to have to say that walking 3,100 miles and finishing that when I'm 67, it's got to be way up there. I am pleased, though, particularly that along the way, this overlap with it's not just my professional life, but my deeply personal life in accompanying people who are grieving. The fact that I got that there was a connection there that I could share with people with the full intent of it being an uplifting connection. Like I think nature was showing me occasionally, because through mistakes I made and getting it right the next time, that we are upheld even in nature, that there are examples of resilience and adaptability and strength and creative fun in nature that if we pay attention to, that can also be a very inspiring connection. I'm very, very happy that I lived long enough to get that.
Yes, well, I mean, you are out in the wonder of the Creator.
Yes.
And just to see the glory all around and to take that in, that has got to be inspiring. You're not the only one that was on the trail.
No.
And I have not yet done this walk.
Still there. Still time.
I don't know. Do you walk by yourself? Are you with a group? Do you walk by yourself and you come to a place where there's a community? Tell me about life on the trail.
Life on the trail. Well, I have to say that it's always safer to go with at least one other person. Having said that, sometimes I was technically by myself, but I know this trail so well, and especially in Colorado where I live, that I could time it to go out when I would know that there would be a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people. everybody heads for the mountains of Colorado to hike in July and August. That's when the weather is best and the snow has melted.
Okay. I'm thinking because I'm in North Carolina and it's 90 degrees
Oh, you wouldn't know
outside.
that. No, nay.
No, why would you go in the hottest time? Oh, wait, no.
No, it's like you want to go out ideally when the snow has melted.
Okay, yeah.
Because you don't want to get caught in an avalanche and you don't want to freeze
No.
to death and all that stuff. And you might not have the gear on the right gear for your feet, etc. So in July and August, you can count on a massive number of people, generally speaking, being on parts of the mountains. So often I would go in those 2 months anywhere on the Continental Divide. I was avoiding being out there in the snow. So I would go in the summer months, except in New Mexico, I could go in the spring because it's desert. And so I could get away with hiking in the spring there. Having said that, I'm in my 60s, which is at least twice the age of most people on the trail. Sometimes I was their grandmother's age. And what was delightful for me is the community of the trail, because we were all united in enjoying the trail. And it never mattered that I was that much older. I didn't pretend like I was 30 and do silly stuff trying to keep up with the pace of somebody who was 25 to 35 years old. That's ridiculous. And they knew I wasn't trying to pretend that I was that, but we were simply enjoying, because they would often, the thru hikers, those are the people who do the whole thing in 5 months, they might be putting in 30 miles a day. I was 15 miles a day on average. So we weren't identical in our skill, but we are identical in our enjoyment of being out there. And I think people are generally at their best when they're feeling good out in the fresh air and nature. So,
Absolutely.
I had wonderful interactions with people on the trail. I never encountered a person that I had a problem with. That I don't want to be naive. That can happen. Generally speaking, it's near towns and trailheads. So it is better to go with people. But there were, a third of the trail I did on my own, a third with my oldest brother. I didn't plan it this way, just worked out this way, and a third with other hiking partners. So there were, in other words, at least 1,000 miles on my own.
So you have 3,100 miles and you say, okay, this week or whatever, I'm going to get on the trail here and go from here to here. And then you get off. And then another time you pick up from, is that how?
That's how I did it. I was what's called a section hiker. I was a section.
Yeah. So you couldn't count it as a section hike if you made 2 miles, right?
I guess you could. You're just going to.
It's
going to take you a long time.
Take you.
On average, because it's so long. If I was going into Wyoming, Montana, if I was going far from home, I would go for at least 100 miles to make it worthwhile to be out on the. There's also, quite frankly, and especially at my age, a significant amount of training. If you're really young, you can get away with, frankly, abusing your body by just throwing yourself out there. But if you go out there unprepared at my age, you're going to get injured and your recovery is going to be long. So I was, if I was preparing all winter long in order to go, I was going to go with some length in it to make it worthwhile.
Right.
And I was working full time for most of that. As I eased toward like part-time and then retirement, then I would go out for 300 miles. And at the last couple of years there, not the very last year, but 2022, 2023, it was over 500 miles in a summer because I was getting older. That was in 2021 and 2022. I finished August of 23. I was getting older. I thought I better get this done before my body says.
My dash is getting, I'm getting to my dash. Oh, wait, my dash keeps getting longer. I keep,
and there's also this community of support. Even if you say, okay, I was hiking by myself, you've got people helping you off the trail. My husband, other members of the family, mailing me supplies or dropping me off at a trailhead, or people that I met and asked for help. There was a lot of people.
Now, when you're doing this trail, you have to plan ahead and have pre-prepared things and have all that. There are trails you can walk that you just walk and you can get to a point and get off. And
yes, and the trail that many of your listeners might have heard of is Appalachian Trail, has far more towns on it. There's a substantial part of this trail that is federally designated wilderness. And the farther north you get, there's more than 100 miles between towns. And if that's the case, the logistics are daunting, and they're different than if you had a lot of towns along the way.
And
Because
does
I
yourself
needed a supply in the middle. So sometimes I was hiring someone on horseback or in a Jeep to get the supplies to me. Yes.
does your cell phone always work?
No,
See,
no.
and you suffer from nomophobia.
Well, what you bring is a satellite connected device,
Okay.
so that in an emergency you can send
Right.
messages, or you can just send a message that says, I'm okay, and here's where I am. But you
Okay.
definitely don't always have cell service.
Wow, that's real wilderness.
No cell phone. I
Oh,
loved it.
okay, next question. That was lovely. What makes you feel like you belong?
You pick up on the energy of people. You pick up on the energy of the place. Even if no one's around in nature, there were times, there was one night when I felt like I belonged, because all night long, maybe 30 yards or from my tent, was a very large bull elk he went around the tent like the corners of the compass, bugling. Now, there's a number of reasons why he might have done that, but because he never disturbed me and I never disturbed him, and he was gone by dawn, and I got up, and I felt such gratitude in my heart. I felt like I had been accepted in that space. I felt like his energy. I mean, you pick up on the energy of a person. We all do. And I think you can of an animal and a space as well. And wherever I have been where I felt I should stay, I have felt accepted, like I belonged there, like I had a place, like I had something to contribute that was valuable, and that other people's contributions were valuable to that community. And what I found is that could apply in nature as well. I felt like I had a place there.
That's beautiful. Okay. The third question I like to ask is, what is your favorite quote? And I love yours.
Well, mine's from me, which sounds terribly egotistical, but if it's pertaining to this experience, my favorite quote is, actually, I'll extend it just by one sentence, is, I'm a woman of simple tastes, but I have spent really good money to pay a dude in a Jeep to drop me off in the middle of nowhere. I don't spend a lot of money on other things, but I have definitely spent money on that.
Well, you know what matters to you.
Yeah.
And you're not spending it, you're investing it.
And then, yeah, it's like partly related to saving my life. If it wasn't dropping me off, it was picking me up. I've sometimes sent out a message, I need to be picked up out of here, or people would supply me in the middle of nowhere, what we call the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere. Well, you know, if it's declared wilderness by the government, I would count that as middle of nowhere.
And then it was on a horse, because you can't drive a Jeep into that. But you know what I mean? It's like, bring me something or get me out of here. I have spent money on those things, those moments.
Wow. Did you ever have a scary time or a health risk or an injury that was like an emergency?
I had not, I'm happy to say I did not have an injury. I certainly know people who did on hikes, long, distant, and remote hikes. I did not. But was I in dangerous situations? Definitely. People often think it's going to be because of either another person or an animal, but the most dangerous situations on long distance remote hikes, at least when you're as high as I often was, high in elevation. Yes, high in elevation, I hesitate to say, not high in other ways.
Oh, yes, I'm glad you clarified that.
That's right. I was not high ever in other ways.
High in elevation.
In elevation, in the mountains, the concern is weather, lightning, and storms, because the storms in the mountains can come in very rapidly and be exceptionally dangerous. And I was certainly caught in a few of those.
Well, but also you're challenged with less oxygen.
Yes, your body is working harder. Your heart and lungs are working harder because of the elevation. The whole trail isn't at high elevation, but it's the Continental Divide, a substantial part of it in Colorado and parts of Wyoming, parts of Montana, certainly above 9,000 feet.
Mm. Wow. Any other quotes?
Well, there is one. There's one.
Okay.
It's right. I keep it right behind me here. This was in my senior yearbook. That's high school. And I thought it was by Willy Wonka. Remember that movie? The
Yes.
original Willy. I was wrong. Years later, I found out who it was from, which was a English poet of Irish descent, Arthur O'Shaughnessy. We are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams. There's more to it than that, but I've always loved that because it allows for having dreams, allows for having a vision that you walk toward, literally or metaphorically. We are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams. I love the creative aspect of that and the dream aspect of that. And I've always been a person who believed that it was important to have a dream and a vision. Yeah.
I agree with that. And what brought community, no matter what age or skill level on the trail, was that you all had the vision
Yes.
of being on that. And
That
when
we could have this experience and complete it. Yes, absolutely. And that it was worth it. I mean,
Right.
it's painful, it's dangerous, it's challenging, it's mentally and physically, honestly, exhausting. You have to, why would you keep going if you didn't believe it was worth it? And that's
And
a form of a vision and a dream.
that brings up another question. Would you, how would you, or what motivates? Does everybody have the same motivation, or does everybody have their own different motivation for even taking this vision on?
I think to be completely honest about that is I think some people approach it rather egotistically, like I'm going to conquer this. I find that offensive. We're talking about creation here, for first of all. Show some respect. We're talking about land that has history. And some of the history in the United States on land, in the Western United States, which I'm just more familiar with, is bloody. It's
Mm,
haunted in some respects because it's got some and sad. Let's just say loss.
right.
Wars. So show some respect for where you are. And the third thing is this is really old. This landscape's really old. It's going to outlive you. You haven't conquered anything. Just walk through.
They're not making any more dirt.
Yeah, walk through mindfully and respectfully and joyfully. So I do think people might all go out there with the same hope of finishing, but I think that the attitudes can really vary, very
Mm.
much so.
Do you think that by the time you finish, that a lot of people have come closer together in their opinion of it?
That's a wonderful question. I
Like the
think
one
if
that goes out egotistically,
yes,
thinking it's going to conquer it, by the end of it, if they've done the whole thing,
yes,
they're going
I
to
think it
humble.
honestly, there's a lot of the processing of an experience like that happens when you go home. So at first, because when you're working that hard physically, you almost go into a state of mind that's kind of almost hypnotic because
So focused.
you're so focused and your body is working so hard that it kind of shuts down some of the processing centers in the mind, I think. But when you're done and you go home, the hikers I have stayed in touch with, I can tell are clearly processing that experience on a deeper level. So
Mhm.
though it might not happen immediately, I'm hopeful, and I think there's some evidence that it does end up in their psyche that what they have done has been a remarkable experience beyond the physical level to a spiritual level. It's like, has this changed you as a human being? It should. It
Mm.
should be humbling, really. It,
Mhm.
it should make you stronger. That you, in the sense that I know that I could take on some challenges now and kind of cut through the nonsense of the world, and the world does spew out a lot of nonsense at us, and just be more focused on what matters. Um, but it can make you also a humbler person. Is that this world is so incredible, is so beautiful and so interconnected, and
Mhm.
I'm this little person, and yet we are all important.
Yes,
In God's image, we're all important.
absolutely. Absolutely. This has been fantabulous. Do you have any final words or last thing to say to the belongers out there before we close?
Well, I guess I would be missing an opportunity if I didn't hold my book up again.
That's right. That's
The
right. And for those
waypoints.
that don't have video, it says the waypoints, and it's available on Amazon.
Yes. The waypoints from 400 farewells and 3,000 miles available online, Amazon, and just about everywhere else. And a lot of people want to support their small local bookstore, and you can go in and have them order it.
Ooh,
Definitely.
yay.
Yes.
Yes, support your local people.
Support your local people.
All right. What do you hope that people take away from our conversation today?
Know that you belong.
Oh,
And nature is sending that message to you all the time. And if you can't get out and walk 3,000 miles, that's okay. Go
walk to
into
the mailbox.
go out in your backyard or go in a local park or go down by a river. That's especially nice.
Yes.
And pause and listen and hear what our Creator says through those experiences as well, and through the people whom you love and admire. The Bible says we're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses.
Yes.
There are a lot of people out there who have passed on, who are ahead of us. They're not behind us in our past, they're ahead of us over the horizon, and they're cheering for you. They're cheering for you.
Love that. Well, to our amazing guests, Diane, thank you. And to our listeners, belongers, stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you belong. This is Dea Irby with Here Where You Belong podcast, signing off. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Hear Where You Belong. We hope today's episode has inspired you to embrace the beauty of belonging in your own life. Remember, no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. Join us again next time for more insightful conversations and heartwarming stories. Until then, stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember that you belong.